Comic Boom.
Hey guys, Comic Boom here to review Wonder Woman Annual number 3. And this is written by Steve Orlando. He is the writer that will be taking over from J. Willow Wilson. And I have had some trepidation about Steve Orlando because I actually feel that his Wonder Woman writing so far has been, frankly, not very good. Very cliche written, and I have to say that despite all that, I was actually mildly happy, or content at least, with his portrayal of Wonder Woman. Infinitely better than J. Willow Wilson. At least Steve Orlando is at least taking a little bit of risk here. It's taking some chances with respect to Wonder Woman, and maybe going out there a little bit in terms of the plot. Now, it's not perfect. I definitely still got my criticisms of Steve Orlando, but I gotta say, this is much more enjoyable than frankly, the stories that he's written before for Wonder Woman, which I've not been a fan of at all. Now, one thing right out of the gate is I like the new characters that he introduces. I like this new character he's introduced called Helen Paul. And this Helen Paul, Wonder Woman rescued about 14 years ago, basically from parents who were former Argus agents, we are led to believe. And these Argus agents were killed, and Wonder Woman basically rescues their daughter named Paula, and she puts Paula into the care of other Argus agents, Harold and Petra Paul. And so Helen Paul grows up and eventually becomes an agent of Argus herself and fights alongside even Steve Trevor and the Oddfellows. So the Oddfellows are mentioned. I kind of like that. And it shows Helen fighting alongside Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman's got a brand new outfit. She's got the old white outfit, the classic white outfit from the 1970s, which is a period of time in Wonder Woman comics that are not particularly well remembered. But I remember Alan Heinberg's run, where there was a brief period of time where back, I think in the 2008, 2009, I think, where Alan Heinberg wrote Wonder Woman, and she had a secret identity, was given a secret identity for a time, and she had the white outfit. And it's interesting. I like seeing Wonder Woman in a white outfit here. She looks pretty cool. It'll kick-ass. Although I do note a couple of things I noticed. I'm not sure why Steve Orlando gave Wonder Woman red glasses. Why is she wearing red shades glasses? She doesn't have an eyesight problem, so I don't know why Wonder Woman would need to wear glasses. So that's kind of curious. He also gives her a sort of almost like her own sort of utility belt, but what's in the pouches? What's with the pouches? I don't get that. Also gave Wonder Woman knee pads. And I made some comments on the Slack about Wonder Woman having knee pads because she's always supplicating herself, just in case Wonder Woman gets on her knees so much again that Steve Orlando has given her knee pads. I was actually worried when I first saw the knee pads, because I thought, good Lord, Mr. Orlando, please don't tell me you're going to have Wonder Woman get on her knees again in front of some villain. Please don't have her do that. Good grief. Can we stop with the supplication already? Enough. Well, I'm happy to report that Wonder Woman is not on her knees at any point in this particular issue, in this story, and I like it that way. That's the way it ought to be. Now, continuing on, the storyline here I really enjoy. The art here I got to give credit to Ken Marion. Ken Marion, he's the artist. He does a really good job. Hi-Fi is the inker. He does a good job on the inks. I really enjoyed the art here. I thought it was very well done. The action here, it's action-packed, it's action-paced. I quite like it, and it involves basically Wonder Woman working alongside Argus agents, attacking Gorilla City, and particularly attacking Gorilla City, where Gorilla Grodd has held captive a member of Argus who happens to be a double agent by the name of Carmack. Now, Carmack is a gorilla who is undercover, working for Argus, feeding Argus information about Gorilla Grodd's machinations in his attempts to basically attack humanity. Because Gorilla Grodd hates humanity, and so Carmack, this other gorilla, is undercover trying to find information out to feed back to Argus, because there's this, apparently there's this war, an ongoing war between the forces of Argus and Gorilla Grodd, the forces of Gorilla Grodd. Now, while I find that a little odd, because the story seems to talk about a war between Argus and Gorilla Grodd, where that doesn't really make much sense. Argus is an intelligence agency it wouldn't be at war with Argus. It would probably be at war with the government that represents Argus, which would be the United States. But it's not stated that way. Now, Wonder Woman, it's really odd here, and where I think Steve Orlando gets a little bit tripped up, and where I think he didn't take enough chances on this storyline, is Wonder Woman is working for Argus, but in attacking Gorilla Grodd, in attacking the forces, she doesn't want to use an excessive amount of force. And while they're trying to break into the city, they want to go unnoticed, so they use telepathic holograms, where essentially the telepathic powers are basically siphoned off of Gorilla Grodd, I think, and they hide their identities by looking like other gorillas to infiltrate Gorilla City. And by doing so, they locate where Carmack is, and in attempting to rescue Carmack, Wonder Woman has to confront Gorilla Grodd, and a number of things happen, which I find interesting. Number one, it becomes clear that Wonder Woman doesn't care what her mission for Argus is. She's got her own mission. Now, her own mission is that she is going to facilitate a peaceful resolution to the dispute without having to have any bloodshed. Now, that's completely unrealistic, but despite that, Wonder Woman manages to pull that off. So we literally have Argus forces attacking Gorilla Grodd's forces attacking Argus agents, and we are to believe that nobody gets killed in this entire issue, which is, I think, absurd. But again, if anybody gets killed, that will make Wonder Woman look less of a peacemaker or less of a peaceful warrior if anybody is killed in any conflict upon which Wonder Woman intervenes. This is Steve Orlando, I think, scripting something that is a little bit unrealistic. He's got to understand, and he's got to take chances with Wonder Woman and give her and exemplify her failures. Wonder Woman is not going to be able to prevent death when there's a war. That's not possible. As a matter of fact, that's not even what anybody expects of Wonder Woman. So stop being so nonsensical in that regard, Mr. Orlando, okay? You got a good story here, but it's okay if people get killed. In fact, it ought to be expected, because when Argus attacks Gorilla City, there should be some casualties. Now, in attacking Gorilla City, Wonder Woman confronts Gorilla Grodd, and she uses her magic lasso to create, the minute she wraps her lasso around Gorilla Grodd, right away Gorilla Grodd is brought into the Golden Perfect, which is sort of a psychological realm where it almost creates a mental state, a new mental state, sort of like a mental cage, where if you're wrapped in the magic lasso, Wonder Woman can communicate with you almost telepathically, but in its own Golden Perfect kind of room. Golden Perfect referring to another word for the magic lasso. And what I like what Steve Orlando did here is that he made it clear that Gorilla Grodd is not somebody that can be brainwashed by the magic lasso. Steve Orlando did a storyline, I forget what issue of Wonder Woman it was in, it was about a year ago, where Wonder Woman pulled the same thing with a general between two warring armies, and she had them sort of brought into the Golden Perfect cage or psychological realm, and the Golden Perfect almost seemed to compel them to surrender, to see the error of their ways, which is absolutely nonsense. The magic lasso ought not to have any kind of mind-altering powers, or it ought not to be able to compel you to do anything. Even if it makes you see a different kind of truth, it shouldn't be able to force you to do anything, which was the suggestion, or at least that's the suggestion I got out of it. I thought it was nonsense. What I like here is that Gorilla Grodd was not affected by being within the Golden Perfect. He basically said, look, I want to kick some butt here. I hate humanity. I'll always hate humanity. I don't care about peace. Don't tell me about peace. Don't tell me about the truth of peace. Don't give me this nonsense. I'm still going to attack humanity. I'm still going to do evil. And Wonder Woman, thankfully, she doesn't get on her knees. What does she do? She breaks Gorilla Grodd's teeth, knocks his teeth out. I loved it. That's what I want to see in Wonder Woman. I want to see more aggressive action like that to dispense with such craziness when you confront a villain like Gorilla Grodd. I really like seeing that. So kudos to you, Mr. Orlando. I like seeing Wonder Woman kick some butt. Now, following that, the defeat of Gorilla Grodd, Wonder Woman then goes to prevent Steve Trevor from using lethal force against the forces of Gorilla Grodd's forces that are attacking Argus. And Wonder Woman views it as her mission to basically stop Argus as well as it is to stop Gorilla Grodd. So now I find that interesting because I wonder how Argus feels about that. They allowed Wonder Woman to go on the mission with them, and they had Wonder Woman go on the mission with them, but Wonder Woman routinely always has this habit of deciding for herself what her mission is. Now that's fine, that's what I expect of Wonder Woman, but at the same time, I would expect Argus at this point in time to sort of realize that Wonder Woman is a wild card. If you have an objective, the chances of you achieving that objective are demonstrably lower if you have Wonder Woman with you, because Wonder Woman's going to decide for herself what the actual objective is. Now, Wonder Woman basically ensures that no lives are lost, or at least we are to believe that. She essentially creates a situation where Argus and Gorilla Grodd's forces surrender and stop fighting, and she promises Gorilla Grodd's forces that, look, she says, I promise you that I'm going to go back and Argus is going to make amends to you and send you humanitarian aid because they never told you that they were violating your sovereignty by coming in and rescuing their double agent. And that no matter what happens, Wonder Woman promised that she will deal with Argus if Argus never did what she told them to do. Very naive position for Wonder Woman to take, and I would like to think that Argus wouldn't put up with such nonsense from Wonder Woman and put Wonder Woman in her place and say, you don't dictate to the United States government what we will do or what we will not do, and they should go in and finish off Gorilla Grodd's forces. If I was writing this and I was script doctor, that's how I would change it. And if Wonder Woman had a problem with that, then she could become an enemy of the United States government, and then that would be an interesting storyline. Wonder Woman has this nasty habit of deciding for herself what's going to work and what's not going to work. I don't think the United States government or Argus, if Argus is separate from the United States government, which of course I don't believe it is. In fact, it shouldn't even exist anymore because of the events of Leviathan, but the events may have taken place in the past sometime. Argus, in my view, should not be dictated to by Wonder Woman, and if Wonder Woman's going to start dictating to governments whether or not they should be sending in humanitarian aid to a former enemy, well, that's really Wonder Woman getting in. Now, again, that's Wonder Woman being kick-ass and basically taking names. So on the one hand, I don't mind that, but don't assume that Argus is simply going to capitulate and start taking orders from an Amazon. That doesn't make any sense to me. When's the last time you heard of an intelligence agency being dictated to by a metahuman? Not very often. In fact, that's the whole premise of the Leviathan storyline, is that Leviathan has taken out the intelligence agencies because intelligence agencies don't seem to listen to reason or anything else. Speaking of Leviathan, Leviathan shows up here. And Helen Paul, the woman, the young girl that was rescued by Wonder Woman 14 years ago, is one of the Argus agents that helps Wonder Woman deal with the Carmack mission in rescuing Carmack from the Gorilla City. She ends up being approached by Leviathan, and she ends up becoming the WarMaster, now known as Paula Von Gunther. Paula Von Gunther, she is the WarMaster. And it's very interesting how Leviathan recruits Paula Von Gunther, or Helen Paul, to his side. He basically tells her a story that's very interesting. Apparently, Paula's parents, Helen Paul's parents, were in fact terrorists who worked for the Sons of Liberty, and the Sons of Liberty were linked to the Valkyries, and the Valkyries were apparently immortal enemies of the Amazons. And that's interesting. I never knew that. And if I did know that, I forgot. That's interesting. So I like the mythology and the history that Steve Orlando was building here. I did not know that about, he's building a history. That's interesting. WarMaster is Ares Buchanan. WarMaster used to be a male character in Wonder Woman lore, played initially by the name of Ares Buchanan, who was essentially possessed by the spirit of Ares, the god of war. But this WarMaster is Paula Von Gunther, who in the past was a Valkyrie character that had an ongoing war and was actually utilized by the Spear of Destiny, I believe, was was called upon by Hitler, utilizing the Spear of Destiny, and this Paula Von Gunther in the past was a villain of World War II that was written about in Wonder Woman comic books in the past. Now that's what I got on DC Wikipedia or something. It's interesting. It's even more interesting to see what Steve Orlando is going to do with that. I like the idea of mythology building on this war that Steve Orlando hints at between the Valkyrie and the Amazons, this immortal, ongoing lifetime war, extending lifetimes between the Valkyrie and the Amazons, which are interesting because the Valkyrie they're all women and the Amazons are all women, showing that women just don't get along. Even immortal women don't get along with each other. That's interesting though. You know, give a woman a little power, and they freak. That's a quote from Sledgehammer, which I quoted on the Slack again as my one of my favorite 1980s sitcoms. It was a very chauvinist sitcom, as you can imagine, but it was funny. In any event, there's a lot to play with here with Steve Orlando, so I'm impressed with the storyline. I'm impressed with the potential plot lines that can be explored here. I'm a little bit cynical because I don't know if Steve Orlando is quite up to task to explore the ramifications of all these potential storylines, but I'm willing to give him a shot because I like his ideas, and I like that this Wonder Woman is a little bit more kick-ass. I like the costume here. I like he's doing something different. He's rocking the boat a little bit. I like the idea of a Valkyrie versus the Amazons, a lifelong war. I like the idea of WarMaster. I like the idea of Paula Von Gunther, and she has this symbol which I find very interesting on her shoulder, and I don't know what that symbol is, if it's a combination of the Leviathan symbol and something else. I'm curious to know what the origins of that symbol are and what that symbol represents, or if I'm just reading into something that's not actually there, but the symbol is interesting. So much about this issue I think is worthy of, is substantially better than what's come before in Wonder Woman. I'm really looking forward to where this is headed. And I hope my optimism is not misplaced, because I have to give this, I'm going to give this a 7.5 out of 10 solidly. I got to give Steve Orlando credit. He has impressed me with this issue, and I want him to ride this into some interesting plot lines moving forward. We'll see what he can do. Guys, tell me what you think of this issue, Wonder Woman Annual number 3. I think it's a setup for something. It's a little bit of a forced issue to make Wonder Woman relevant to the Leviathan storyline, but Paula Von Gunther, the WarMaster, being an agent of Leviathan, I think it's interesting. You can pretty much bet at some point she's probably going to break off from Leviathan, but I like it. This is a nice way, even though it's somewhat forced, to make Wonder Woman more relevant into the Leviathan storyline beyond simply Steve Trevor being in the remnants of the explosion of Leviathan at the end of Leviathan number 1. In any event, guys, tell me what you think of Wonder Woman Annual 3. Follow me on Twitter at Metropolis40. And until next time, Comic Boom out.